By the time venues started canceling his shows, it was already too late. A 14-year-old fan attacks a 66-year-old usher at his Kansas City concert. Chicago's United Center shuts down its performance citing public safety concerns.
United Center didn't give a reason for canceling the concert, but says tickets will be refunded.
Cities across America started asking the same question. What happens when NBA YoungBoy comes to town? This is a rapper who's accumulated over 15 billion YouTube views, charted 100 songs, and built a cult following so devoted that "Don't ever disrespect YoungBoy" became an internet commandment. But the danger isn't just the music, it's what the music does to people. Fans sob uncontrollably at his concerts. Teenagers commit assault in his name, and the man at the center of it all once emerged on stage from inside a coffin, stoic and resigned, like someone who knew he'd end up back in a cage sooner or later. YB has been shot at, arrested on federal gun charges, and spent years under house arrest. He's turned down $25 million, topped the charts from jail, and released music at a pace that borders on compulsive. When asked about performing in front of thousands, he admits,
"I'm terrified of people. I am very scared of people. Like on my kids. I am terrified of people, and I'm very shy."
So how did a scared kid from Baton Rouge become one of the most volatile forces in rap? This is the story of NBA YoungBoy. Kentrell Deshaun Gaulden was born on October 20th, 1999, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in the Scotlandville neighborhood, a part of the city where violent crime wasn't an anomaly, it was the ambient noise. His father, Jeffrey Staten, was handed a 55-year prison sentence when Kentrell was young, which meant he was raised primarily by his mother, Shahonda, and his maternal grandmother, Alice Gaulden. The house ran on welfare checks and whatever small money came in from side hustles. At one point, his grandmother was shopping for jewelry for Boozy Badazz, a Baton Rouge rap legend who was either a family friend or a distant cousin depending on who you ask. The point is, YB grew up around the music, around the hustle, and around people who understood that survival in Baton Rouge meant keeping your head on a swivel.
Like y'all might think this funny, but if half the people in South Baton Rouge, they've never been outside of South Baton Rouge, like talking about.
We can relate to that.
Half the people in Glen Oaks area, they probably really have never been out of Glen Oaks, you know.
By all accounts, he was a small kid with a big temper. At 4 years old, he broke his neck wrestling and had to wear a head brace, leaving a permanent scar and a chip on his shoulder about being tough despite his size. Teachers said he was confident, borderline defiant, even as a child. He had the kind of energy that either got shaped into discipline or exploded into trouble. And in Scotlandville, there weren't a lot of people around to do the shaping. In 2010, when Kentrell was 10, his grandmother Alice died. She'd been the stabilizing presence in the house, and losing her felt like losing a parent. After that, he bounced between group homes, and that's where things got worse. He's spoken about those group homes in interviews, and the story he tells is bleak. He got beaten up regularly, and instead of breaking him, it hardened him. "I used to get beat up," he said later, "and it made me discover another side of me. I found out how to be the person that you don't want to do that with." By 15, he was in juvenile detention for robbery, scribbling rap lyrics in a notebook to pass the time. He wasn't writing about fictional scenarios. He was writing about what he'd seen, what he'd done, and what he was afraid would happen next. School wasn't an option anymore. He dropped out of Scotlandville Magnet High School in 9th grade and moved in with a local rapper named NBA YoungBoy, who gave him a place to stay and introduced him to the neighborhood crews. By then, Kentrell had already been exposed to the gang culture that dominated Baton Rouge, groups like CBM and BGZ. He wasn't just observing it, he was in it, running small-time robberies to fund studio time, living on the edge of something that could either turn into a career or a casket. Music entered his life as a release valve. He saved up $89, bought a microphone from Walmart, and started recording on a home computer. His influences were local: Boozy Badazz, Kevin Gates, the aggressive trap sound that Louisiana had been exporting for years. But he was also listening to Tupac, studying the way emotional honesty could coexist with street credibility. At 14, he was already writing full verses. At 15, he was in jail with a notebook, figuring out how to turn his life into bars that someone might actually want to hear.
When you be like, "Ma, put this in your CD. I got a new song. Lil Fat got a new song." I used to get so tired of him. I'd be like, "Boy."
The tension at the end of his early life was simple. He had talent, he had nothing to lose, and he was one bad decision away from disappearing into the system permanently. By 2015, Kentrell Gaulden had a stage name, YoungBoy Never Broke Again, shortened to NBA YoungBoy, and a Walmart microphone. What he didn't have was money, industry connections, or any real reason to believe this would work. His first mixtape, Life Before Fame, dropped that year when he was 15. It was raw, unpolished, and mostly ignored outside outside of Baton Rouge. But it existed, and that was the point. He kept recording, kept uploading to YouTube and SoundCloud, kept grinding through home studios and borrowed equipment. In October 2016, he released 38 Baby, a mixtape that finally caught some regional traction. It had the fast-paced, aggressive flow that would become his signature, and it introduced the version of NBA YoungBoy that people would come to recognize, angry, vulnerable, and unwilling to lie about either. By the end of 2016, he dropped the Mind of a Menace series and was starting to build a small but loyal fan base on YouTube. The algorithm liked him, the streets liked him. The problem was the law didn't. In November 2016, YoungBoy was arrested in Austin, Texas for an alleged drive-by shooting. The charge was attempted murder. He sat in jail for 5 months while his lawyer fought to get the charges reduced. And when he finally made bail in May 2017, $150,000 fronted by Atlantic Records as part of an advance, he walked out with a plea deal for aggravated assault and a chip on his shoulder the size of Louisiana. Within days of his release, he dropped Untouchable. The timing was perfect, the song was defiant, and the video went viral immediately. The lyrics, "They trying to count me out, I'm still here," became a rallying cry, and the narrative of a young rapper bouncing back from jail with a hit record wrote itself. Untouchable peaked at number 95 on the Hot 100, which doesn't sound like much until you consider that he'd done it without radio play, without a major label push, and without compromising a single bar to make it more palatable. In August 2017, Atlantic officially signed him to a $2 million 5-album deal. That same week, he dropped AI YoungBoy, a mixtape that debuted at number 24 on the Billboard 200. The single, No Smoke, became a street anthem, and by the end of the year, he was opening for 21 Savage on tour, exposing himself to national audiences who'd never heard of Baton Rouge but recognized real when they heard it. By early 2018, YoungBoy had momentum, a major label deal, and a work ethic that bordered on obsessiveness. In January, he released Outside Today, a single that would become his highest charting song at the time, peaking at number 31 on the Hot 100. The video showed him moving through Baton Rouge with his crew, and the song had the kind of melodic hook that stuck without feeling like a compromise. In April, he dropped his debut studio album, Until Death, Call My Name, which hit number 7 on the Billboard 200. It included Diamond Teeth Samurai, a track that interpolated Lil Wayne and showed he could reference legends without getting buried by the comparison. But success didn't slow down the chaos. In February 2018, a video surfaced of YoungBoy body slamming his girlfriend Jania Meshel in a hotel hallway. The footage went viral, and the charges that followed, felony aggravated assault and kidnapping, hung over him for the next year and a half. Jania later claimed it was consensual roughhousing, but the optics were brutal, and prosecutors didn't care about context. YoungBoy went quiet publicly, letting his lawyers handle the case while he kept his head down in the studio. The strategy seemed to be outwork the controversy. Between June and December 2018, he released 4 connected EPs, For Respect, For Freedom, For Loyalty, and For What Important, which were later compiled into one project. In September, he dropped Decided, a mixtape featuring Trippie Redd. In 2 months came Reeler, with features from Lil Baby and Plies. It was an absurd release schedule, and it worked. By the end of 2018, YoungBoy had spent more weeks at the top of YouTube's music charts than any other artist. He wasn't chasing radio play or industry cosigns. He was building an empire on streaming numbers and a fan base that treated every release like an event. In December 2019, the domestic assault case was finally resolved. He pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor, simple domestic battery, paid a fine, and walked away without jail time. The reduced charge kept his career intact, but the stain remained. Critics pointed to the video as proof of his volatility. Fans pointed to the plea as proof the system had overcharged him. Either way, the case became another data point in the narrative that YoungBoy was talented, troubled, and impossible to ignore. By 2019, YoungBoy was operating under house arrest for probation violations tied to the assault case, which meant he was stuck at home, unable to tour, unable to leave, except for studio sessions. Most artists would have seen that as a career killer. YoungBoy treated it like a creative residency. In September, he dropped House Arrest Tings, a defiant single that acknowledged his situation without wallowing in it. Then, in October, he surprised everyone with Bandit, a collaboration with Juice WRLD that hit number 10 on the Hot 100, his highest charting single to date. A week later, he released AI YoungBoy 2, and it debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 with 110,000 units sold. It was a watershed moment. He'd gone from a regional Baton Rouge rapper to a chart-topping artist without compromise, without a pop feature, and without leaving his house. The album was raw, emotional, and unfiltered, and it cemented his reputation as someone who could dominate the industry on his own terms. 2020 turned him into a streaming juggernaut. In February, he dropped Still Flexin', Still Steppin', which debuted at number 2. In April, 38, Baby 2 hit number 1. In September, Top also debuted at number 1. He became the first rapper ever to have 3 number 1 albums in 10 months, and he did it while the rest of the industry was figuring out how to function during a pandemic. By the end of the year, he'd released 2 more projects, Until I Return, a YouTube exclusive mixtape, and Nobody Safe, a collaboration with Rich the Kid. The output was relentless, and the fan base ate it up. Then came the federal case that nearly derailed everything. On September 28, 2020, a SWAT team raided a music video shoot in Baton Rouge. YoungBoy was hit with federal weapons and drug charges, specifically felon in possession of a firearm. Okay. He'd already been convicted of aggravated assault back in 2017, which meant he legally couldn't own a gun, and the feds had him on camera with one. The charges were serious, and the potential sentence was years in federal prison. He spent most of 2021 fighting the case from behind bars, but that didn't stop the music. In September 2021, while still incarcerated, he released Sincerely Kentrell, an album recorded entirely over the phone from jail. It debuted at #1, making him only the third rapper ever, after Tupac and Lil Wayne, to top the Billboard 200 from behind bars. The accomplishment was impressive, but the context was grim. He was 21 years old, facing a decade in prison, and wondering if he'd ever perform in front of a crowd again. In July 2022, a Los Angeles jury found him not guilty on one of the gun charges, but the Baton Rouge federal case dragged on. Meanwhile, he was living under strict house arrest in Utah, monitored by an ankle bracelet, unable to tour or promote his music in person. Most artists would have gone quiet. YoungBoy released 7 projects in 2022 alone. In February 2022, Lil Durk dropped Ahaha, a track with thinly veiled shots at YoungBoy. The beef had been simmering for years, tied to the murder of King Von, a Chicago rapper and Durk's close friend who was killed in a shootout involving Quando Rondo, one of YoungBoy's associates. Durk's song referenced Von's death and took aim at YoungBoy's legal troubles, and the rap world waited to see how YoungBoy would respond. He didn't wait long. Within days, YoungBoy dropped I Hate YoungBoy, a diss track that went directly at Durk and anyone else who'd been talking. The song was aggressive, personal, and unapologetic, and it racked up millions of views within hours. The feud became one of the biggest ongoing beefs in rap, with fans on both sides dissecting every lyric, every Instagram post, every subliminal reference.
Says nigga, you push back, you better not ever try it again. Don't play with me.
The beef wasn't just about music, it was about street politics, loyalty, and the blurred line between rap persona and real violence. Critics accused YoungBoy of glorifying the conflict. Fans argued he was defending himself against disrespect. Either way, the feud added another layer to his reputation as someone who didn't back down, even when backing down might have been the smarter move. By mid-2022, YoungBoy had been under house arrest in Utah for nearly 2 years, fighting federal charges and watching his career unfold through a computer screen. Most artists would have renegotiated, compromised, or at least slowed down. YoungBoy did the opposite. In August, Atlantic Records reportedly offered him a $25 million contract extension. He turned it down. The reason, according to people close to him, was simple. He wanted full creative control, and he wasn't willing to trade that for money he didn't need. That same month, he released The Last Lamento, his final album under the Atlantic deal. It debuted at #2 on the Billboard 200, and the title felt deliberate, a signal that he was done playing by anyone else's rules. In October, he dropped 2 more mixtapes, 3800 Degrees and Ma, I Got a Family. The latter, a Gangsta Grillz project featuring Nicki Minaj and Ye. By the end of the month, he'd signed a joint venture deal with Motown and his own Never Broke Again label, effectively becoming an independent artist with major distribution. The move was bold, and critics questioned whether it was smart. Turning down $25 million for the promise of independence is the kind of decision that either looks genius in hindsight or reckless when the checks stopped coming. But YoungBoy had never operated like someone who cared about looking smart. He operated like someone who'd seen too many people around him die young and figured he might as well do things his way while he still could. The federal gun case finally reached its conclusion in December 2024. After years of legal maneuvering, YoungBoy pleaded guilty to firearm possession and was sentenced to 23 months in federal prison. The plea allowed him to avoid a longer sentence, but it also meant admitting guilt. And for someone who'd spent years insisting the charges were overblown, that was a bitter pill. He began serving the sentence, and the question became whether his career could survive another extended absence. Then, in April 2025, President Donald Trump issued an unconditional pardon, commuting the remainder of YoungBoy's sentence. The pardon came as part of a broader clemency effort, but for YoungBoy, it was a lifeline. He walked out of custody, posted a statement thanking Trump and his fans, and immediately got back to work. "I'm grateful, I'm focused, I'm ready," he said in a brief public comment, and for once the words felt less like bravado and more like relief. The pardon didn't erase the years of legal stress, the house arrest, or the fact that he'd lost chunks of his 20s to courtrooms and probation officers. But it gave him something he hadn't had in years: freedom. No ankle monitor, no curfew, no pending sentencing. Just the ability to move, to tour, and to make music without wondering if the next album would have to be recorded over a jail phone. Now let's talk about who YB is when the cameras are off, because the public image only tells half the story. If you only knew NBA YoungBoy from his music, you'd assume he was exactly what the lyrics suggested: volatile, fearless, and always ready for a confrontation. But the people who've actually spent time with him tell a different story. Journalists who've interviewed him describe someone soft-spoken and thoughtful, almost shy. His mother and relatives talk about a person that is really calm and non-aggressive.
He does not start mess. He don't.
Okay.
He stay to himself.
He got a calm demeanor.
Yeah, he
got a
stay to
real calm
himself.
demeanor.
So if somebody like, if y'all see somebody picking on him on the Instagram, or if he going off, that's because somebody came to him first. Like,
Right.
That's how he don't start mess like that. He don't do none of that.
The music, he said, for him is just entertainment.
I'm gonna talk crazy on that, but I'm letting you know though, Don't try this at home.
Don't try this.
Oh, it's a cautionary.
Yeah, it's all entertainment, bro.
It's a disclaimer that feels necessary because the gap between the person and the persona is wide enough to cause confusion. He writes songs about violence, revenge, and street politics. But off stage, he's the guy who paid for a 10-year-old's funeral in March 2026 after she was killed in an accidental shooting in Baton Rouge. He's the guy who's organized Stop the Violence rallies and donated to local charities, even while rapping about the exact violence he's asking people to stop. The contradictions aren't a bug, they're the whole point. He's a father of more than 10 children by 2026, and he raps about the weight of that responsibility. Kentrell, you gotta man up, you done had all these kids, he tells himself on Heart and Soul. He's someone who admits to being terrified of crowds but performs in sold-out arenas. He's built a career on confessional honesty while maintaining a level of privacy that borders on paranoia, and maybe that's the only way it could work. Baton Rouge doesn't produce artists who get to be one thing. It produces survivors who carry too much, say too much, and hope the music is enough to make sense of it all. Where's it at now? By 2025, YoungBoy was free, touring, and as prolific as ever. In July, he released Massa, Make America Slime Again, an album that debuted in the top 10 and kicked off a 42-city tour across the United States. The tour ran from September through November, selling out arenas in cities that had once been hesitant to book him due to safety concerns. In December, he dropped Slime Cry, another top 10 album, closing out the year with 2 major releases and proof that his fan base hadn't gone anywhere. The concerts themselves became spectacles. At some shows, he emerged from a giant egg-shaped prop. At others, he performed inside a coffin before stepping out to a roar from the crowd. The theatrics were new, but the energy was the same. Thousands of fans rapping every word, crying during Heart and Soul, and treating the experience like something closer to a revival than a rap show. But the controversies followed him. In September 2025, a 14-year-old fan was arrested for assaulting a 66-year-old usher at his Kansas City concert, and the incident made local news. Later that month, Chicago's United Center canceled his scheduled show, citing public safety concerns. The explanations varied, but the message was clear. Venues were still nervous about what happened when YoungBoy came to town. He responded the way he always had, by ignoring the noise and releasing more music. In interviews, he talked about being focused on his family, on being present for his children, and on building something sustainable.
Is what you really do care about?
I don't know how to answer that question. I care about my family. That's my answer.
The story of NBA YoungBoy isn't a redemption arc, because redemption implies he was asking for forgiveness in the first place. It's the story of someone who survived a childhood that should have killed him, turned trauma into the most watched catalog in modern rap, and refused to apologize for any of it. He's charted 100 songs on the Billboard Hot 100 without a single crossover hit. He's accumulated 15 billion YouTube views without mainstream radio play. He's topped the charts from jail, released 3 #1 albums in 10 months, and turned down $25 million because he wanted to own his masters. Contradictions remain. He's the shy kid who's terrified of people, and the rapper who commands sold-out arenas. He's the father of 10 telling himself to man up, and the street rapper whose lyrics reference real violence. He's the philanthropist who pays for funerals, and the felon who spent years fighting federal gun charges. None of it cancels out. It all exists at the same time, and that's what makes him compelling. In 2026, Kentrell Gaulden is 26 years old, free for the first time in years, and still making music at a pace that would exhaust anyone else. He's engaged to his fiancée, Yaya, trying to build a stable life for his children, and operating a label that's already launched the careers of younger Baton Rouge artists. He's not reformed, and he's not apologizing. He's just moving forward the way he always has, one project at a time, one stream at a time, one defiant decision at a time. Whether that's sustainable is anyone's guess. But if the last decade has proven anything, it's that betting against NBA YoungBoy has never been a smart move. Let me know in the comments who you want covered next, and if you made it this far, subscribe for more stories like this one.